Hello all, Rick here with Star Trek Discovery's final season beginning. We have the first 2 episodes dropping and already some answers. Spoilers ahead for this review, and of course I'll add some relevant lore too. Okay, so let's get started. This entire series seems to be a chase based off of The Chase from The Next Generation, and I'm okay with that. Discovery is now set in the year 3191, exactly 1,030 years from the foundation of the Federation, meaning that Discovery has now been longer in the 32nd century than its time in the 23rd. The crew has fully adapted to their new setting, and the galaxy is still repairing itself from the wake of the burn and the DMA from Season 4. From what we learn, the UFP is continuing to grow and restore its former scale pre-burn, which is gratifying to hear, and the crew too is reflecting on how long it has endured. We also hear that the Breen and Tholians are still around and remain independent powers, unsurprising considering their typically anti-Federation stances. I would say that I think the celebration scene was a little dry. Either a smaller scale meeting room or more attendees would have done well to capture the livelier atmosphere I think they were going for. In looking into the 32nd century, I find myself constantly amazed at the feats of ships and gear that they can produce, and having to remind myself that this is over 700 years later than the Starfleet we're most familiar with. Programmable matter being so normalised has led to a myriad of formerly impossible feats, such as the Iron Man style deployment of spacesuits in emergencies over regular away team gear, or when they overloaded their phasers to generate an EMP, rather than proceeding unarmed from then on, they simply replicated new ones on the spot. This is of course a great evolution of tech, but does lead to some potential issues, such as travel times being completely null and void it seems, and a lessening of threat and consequence. However, these are hypotheticals, so I'm not going to hold it against it. I just hope it continues to balance the risk with the marvels and feats we see on screen. As it is, the gung-ho vibes were a little too strong for me, but at least they also included scenes of repercussions, such as Burnham visibly being shaken despite her bravado, and the trial scene later for Rainier's disregard of others' safety. So, the ancient humanoids, the progenitors, are the source of this mystery, and the information the Romulan scout ship was carrying was the notes from a background Romulan scientist from the initial away team all that time ago. Man, I was mostly leaning towards the Iconians, but I'm not surprised, and more importantly, I prefer this to be the quest. Interestingly, it was the Romulan Star Empire that had reached out to say farewell to the Enterprise back then, suggesting that not everyone within the Empire was opposed to cooperation as it may seem. Something reinforced with later appearances of the Romulans too, of course. I got a kick out of seeing the faithfully recreated Romulan ship of that era alongside accurate attire, but I still have several questions. Chiefly, what was that scientist doing that led him to be drifting lost for so long? I do wonder if there was any relevance to the discovery of isolinear chips that resembled Federation ones. Was the UFP working with this scientist in the past to uncover the lost history of life? I have a feeling we don't know the whole story yet, and it's one that, as a massive lore nerd, I want to see. The search for the origin of known life is a massive quest, fitting for the millennium birthday of the Federation and as a final season of a Trek show. More than that, however, it looks like it's going to be bringing up all sorts of introspection in the cast, with multiple characters reflecting on what is important to them, what matters, and what meaning can they derive from life. I am glad to see the return of Booker, and was worried after episode 1 that we would be seeing the end of him for some time, but no, he is joining the crew for a while yet. The relationship between him and Burnham is still charged with emotion, although they do seem to be moving into that trope of splitting up a couple for the sake of prolonging the tension for another season that many shows do. Saying that, as tropey as it is done well here, with the two not bickering, not snapping, but maintaining that clear emotional bond, even if it is now fraught with uncertainty. They clarify they have spent time apart, and that his actions in Series 4, while averted, still have Michael's opinion of him damaged. Over this time, they've grown more distant emotionally and out of sync, as demonstrated by them jumping to different plans when working together instead of being of the same mind. I hope they rediscover their synergy, or at least settle into something new over the course of this show. I think they did much for each other's character. Speaking of Booker, I'm glad he identified Mol as someone from his past, or at least his family's past. It adds another complex angle to this chase, but more than that, I am glad he chose not to remain quiet about it, confiding in Culber. Stamets learns that the spore drive is being shelved, which I'm kind of genuinely shocked about. It seems that he believes he could eventually overcome the gene splicing element to it, and additionally individuals such as Booker have shown they have a natural aptitude for its piloting, so to call a hold on it outright seems premature. Nevertheless, it's an interesting arc to begin for Stamets' character. He is someone who has put most of his adult life into developing this tech that he felt was going to revolutionise Starfleet, and has had to come to terms with its seizure for the war effort. Then it was classified and displaced 800 years, and now it's being discontinued. So he's left asking, what is his legacy? I don't know, but finding the origin of the humanoid form might cement his name in history, and I bet the mycelial network is somehow involved. After all, one of his original theories in the Series 1 was that the network could have been a vector for panspermia. This might be how the ancient humanoids spread their form throughout the galaxy onto a myriad of worlds. Saru is accepting the role as an ambassador, which is a perfect fit for him and his skill set. Calm, thoughtful, but brave, and with a multitude of language and scientific skills that help him understand and create solutions. I started to get strong death flags from him, considering he was about to retire from Starfleet. He was getting engaged to Tarina, and I'm glad to see it was not only me. Michael too was clearly trying to protect him when things turned south on their mission, and I genuinely did not know if he was going to survive these initial episodes. Glad he has, and tying into the themes of discovering meaning in their own existence, he realises how much Tarina means to him. He unpacks his experiences at being emotionally unavailable when it comes to intimate love, thanks to his oppression as a 23rd century Kelpian. So it's wonderful to see him get a happy end to his tale. Saying that, I think we'll see him again, so perhaps he's not exactly safe yet. The Kelleran, Captain Rayner, being introduced as the new XO. I think it's a good fit, providing he acts the part he signed up for. As Burnham declares, she does not want him to be a yes man, but once she gives an order, he needs to heed it. Providing he does that, I'm glad he's coming with them, as he is clearly a very experienced and competent officer. He clearly has a vendetta against Mol and La'ak, but hopefully these initial 2 episodes have already dealt with the loss of perspective, compromise and fallout of his character. From here on, he could be a great asset, providing he does not butt heads too much, but clearly his remorse and acceptance of his almost retirement show that he does have a moral core. Early days, but I can say that I preferred his character in the end scenes, and if not for those, I think I would dislike him. Let's take a quick look now at the antagonists of the series, the couriers of Mol and La'ak. La'ak is an unknown species, but I'm going to go with Shapeshifter for now, but we'll see where it goes. Clearly very protective of Mol, the two are in love and engaged in high-octane hijinks together, something that Booker quickly identified from the flair and style the two flaunt in the face of danger. They are thrill-seekers, and it seems to remind Book of the few years he and Michael spent working as couriers between seasons 2 and 3. They're clearly well connected and understand how to make the most of their connections. However, I have one standout criticism. Why did the Federation not offer to buy their score immediately? It was left to Book to pretend to be interested in purchasing, and they turn down the offer only when they've uncovered what it is they are carrying. But at the time, why couldn't the UFP just not offer to pay for their fines? Sure, it's a bit of a compromise, but the salvagers got there first, and it could be passed off as legitimate interest in ancient research. Very Starfleet. It seems like this whole plot could have been avoided by a bit of communication and a quick deal. It feels like the whole Red Directive thing, meaning whatever the cost, jumped a bit too quickly to violence and demands. Sometimes, whatever the cost is simply a financial cost. I can't believe I'm siding with the Ferengi on this one, but yeah, if salvagers got to it first, just pay them whatever latinum they want and done. So that felt a bit forced for me, a thing that needed to happen to escalate the plot. Even if negotiations fell through, it would have been good to give more reason to the chase. Some other observations. I loved the use of Romulan culture and clues to add misdirects and lies to the uncovering of the progenitor's path. with mentions to the false door of an abode that Romulans use, hiding the real entrance, and the poem that traditionally has 5 verses being a misdirect unless you had the final verse, which was of course hidden. Burnham's specialty, after all, is xenoanthropology, the study of other cultures, histories and biologies, so she really is playing to her strengths here. Although it still bugs me at how often she embarks on awaiting missions, but I guess you could argue the Red Directive here means that she has to be handling it personally. Seeing assumed type android persisting into this year is remarkable, and while Kolber points out such androids are finally being eclipsed in technology, the fact that Fred was over 600 years old already and still pristine is a testament to the legacy of the Soong creations, something he pointedly throws Stamets' way as a fellow scientist's notable achievements outlasting him. And finally, does Admiral Vance continue to be the most reliable and best admiral in the UFP? Ever? I hope so. Of course he was going to allow Tilly to continue. He hates being kept in the dark too, although I'm not quite sure why this is all so secretive just yet, unless the Federation suspects it's not just answers at the end here, but some actual tech that can create and disseminate life or something, which is quite plausible and seems to be what Kovic is operating on. Finally, I'm grateful for Rayna's intervention in the scene with Tilly and Adira attempting to shut down the power source, but it was a rather obvious thing they were overlooking, no? Was their initial idea just going to be listing every power source ever? Not a very clean setup and payoff, but ultimately a character piece to highlight Rayna's calm under pressure and experience. These opening 2 episodes have been excellent, and going into this series was the most eager for Discovery I've been, with each series improving on the last in my opinion. The action set pieces were impressive, with perhaps a little too much leaning on the gung-ho attitude. The chase at the heart of it all is a great one, with connections to the grander Star Trek lore, and it makes a good theme of reflection and a search for meaning throughout, so I'm expecting a lot of endings and character conclusions as we go on. It still very much came off as the central cast, getting all the focus here, but I think at this point we just have to accept that there is very much an A team and a B team with only so much time to put in the focus on the whole cast. So thanks for watching this review, and what do you think of the direction this narrative is going? I've been Rick, and I'll see you later for another review or video. Until then, goodbye.